Hello and welcome everyone. I'll give it a few minutes to just let the people roll through and we shall start the webinar shortly. But in the meantime, please let us know who's here, send a message in the chat, let us know where you're calling from. And if you have any burning questions already off the bat, feel free to throw them in the chat as well. And we should be coming to those at the end of the webinar content in the last 15 minutes of the Q&A. Hi, everyone. So good to meet you. Send us a little message in the chat just to say hello, and we'll kick off in the next 30 seconds with our content. Looks like we have an international audience, which is great. Okay. Well, let's get started. So welcome everyone to our webinar today. Today, we're going to be talking about defining the most effective retention blueprint and really looking at the strategies leveraged by some of the leading apps in the app stores. We've got a wealth of knowledge today with our expert speakers, lots of good content, lots of good frameworks. So please feel free to, again, share any questions in the chat as they come through, but hopefully you should be left with a really good insight on how retention should be one of the more prominent strategies for your growth this year for your apps. So just a quick overview of the agenda. We are going to be delivering some content on the leading retention strategies facing apps today and sharing some really key insights in terms of how retention and churn is becoming one of the biggest problems in the app marketing space. But also, how do some of these top apps keep their users? What strategies are they leveraging? And how can you build a high-performance retention journey? And let me introduce our speakers today. Today's webinar is hosted by Yodel Mobile, by MP Digital, and our trusted partners at Customer.io. We are joined today by Naomi West, who is an award-winning email and lifecycle marketer. She is super passionate about public speaking and email accessibility and making HTML and CSS less daunting to work with. She's worked with over 25 different email sending platforms, which is very impressive, and in industries ranging from e-commerce to SaaS. We are also joined by our very own Stephen Cooper. He is our account manager here at Yodel Mobile, helping apps to reach their full potential through a mix of data-driven strategies, creativity, and a deep understanding of the mobile ecosystem. His experience spans the full marketing funnel, all the way from acquisition to retention, and ensuring that he can give a holistic view of how to drive sustainable growth. And I'm Arzu. I forgot about myself. I'm the agency growth director at Yodel Mobile, so I'll be the host for today. I focus the agency on business growth and shaping our revenue strategy. And once in a while, I like to get involved in these webinars just to share some insights on the app marketing space over the last decade that I've worked in it. And I'm always really excited to work on these types of presentations, just because I end up learning even more than I thought I could by hearing some of these expert speakers. So you're in very capable hands with Naomi and Stephen today. And just a little introduction to our businesses. So Yodel Mobile is the #1 leading app marketing agency, probably one of the first app marketing agencies to enter into the space 18 years ago. And we've launched more than 2,000 apps in that time, all the way from ASO, UA, retention, mobile creative, monetization. We focus on the full app marketing funnel. And we've won more than 65 awards, including being the current title holders of App Marketing Agency of the Year. And this year, we were also acquired by the MPD or NP Digital family, covering the full digital spectrum and acting as their app marketing arm. And over there, you can see a whole bunch of different apps that we've worked with pretty much every sector in the app marketing space and category. And I'll hand over to Naomi to give a little overview of Customer.io.
Yeah, thank you. So Customer.io is a customer engagement platform, which allows businesses to build relationships with their customers across email, in-app, push, and SMS. From content creation to data analysis to robust A/B testing, this can all happen in Customer.io. Now, I myself was an active end user of Customer.io before I joined. as an employee, and it was one of my favorite platforms. And now it's such a dream to both work here and still use it day to day.
Perfect. So we thought we'd get everyone warmed up by hosting a poll to start things off. We know that there are a plethora of challenges in the app marketing space. We're, of course, covering a little bit more around churn, but we know that acquisition, retention, monetization, re-engagement, data are some of the core pillars that a lot of the app marketing teams are currently focusing on. So I've just published a poll in the poll section of Livestorm. If you can go in and just submit your vote, that would be great. We'd love to see what the core challenges are that you're currently facing as an app marketing business. I can see some of those votes coming through now. So it looks like acquisition is in the lead alongside retention. Still getting some votes through. Great. I can tell, acquisition is definitely kind of core in terms of big challenge and retention for a lot of these app marketing businesses out there. And I think that's the perfect segue to handing over to Stephen, who'll be talking a little bit more about how all of these different challenges throughout the full user lifecycle and customer acquisition funnel can be tackled and what strategies you can leverage to overcome some of these challenges.
Cool. Thank you, Arazu. Yeah, so the first thing that we really wanted to highlight is the cost of churn. We're seeing over the course as years progress, churn is getting more and more of a problem. And, whether it be, your paid UA strategy, whether it be, further down the funnel in terms of, you've acquired all of these users, there are issues in retaining them. So we wanted to pick out a couple of data points just to give you a bit more insight into the challenges that we're seeing loads of people face. So, acquiring users, as everyone will know here, is getting more and more expensive. And we picked out a couple of data points here just from Facebook, TikTok, and Google Ads, just on the incremental increases that we've seen from 2019, 2020, all the way through to 2024. And we're seeing that, it's a bit of a cost problem. Loads of business owners really struggle to make the economics of marketing versus return from their users work. And many people will think that it's the UA that's breaking their strategies for growth. And as I said, it's no wonder when you're looking at these incremental cost increases, particularly with this data in the US, it's a real struggle to make the numbers add up. And loads of people would think, well, it's, an issue right at the top of the funnel that is fundamentally breaking our strategies. As we go through the course of the next couple of slides, we'll be speaking about things like privacy and targeting shifts and why that's making things a little bit more difficult before getting into the nitty and gritty of churn. So yeah, as I said, privacy and targeting shifts are making things a lot more harder and just overall more expensive to find those high quality users to make. Oh, I'm hoping you guys can still hear me. I've just got a big pop up on the screen. On top of, obviously rising cost per installs, we're also facing a bit of a fundamental shift in how we can target and measure users. With Apple's ATT prompt, it was rolled out in iOS 14.5, and it means that users don't need, or users now have to opt in before their data can be tracked. And we're finding that the overall trend of users that do opt into ATT is around about 33 to 35%. So what that means is that 60% of your users, you're not getting the same level of user data, which obviously makes targeting less precise. It makes attribution a lot more difficult, which in turn will just drive up pure CPIs. On the Google side, Google will be phasing in or phasing out traditional tracking methods like third-party cookies. They're going to make it a lot more difficult to get access to device level identifiers. And overall, across both of these platforms, it's just going to be a lot more difficult to isolate the types of users that are really going to drive value towards your app. And yeah, I suppose the big call out number when we're thinking about churn is that 80% of your app users will churn within 90 days. And what that means for people that are running big UA campaigns and UA strategies, for every 10 installs that you're driving, only 2 are sticking around long enough to deliver value. And this is a big point for, all of those people that are running all of these campaigns, and they're spending, obviously we saw in a previous slide, we saw costs are increasing right at the top of the funnel, and business owners are making it, really, it's a real struggle for business owners in their mind to compartmentalize. We're spending so much on the UA side, but we're not getting as much back from our users as we would hope. So the break even becomes a little bit more difficult. And I suppose when we're looking at the numbers by vertical, in the chart on the left, you can see just that sharp drop off on day one. And we see this across all sectors, whether it be finance or retail, gaming, travel. All sectors experience this massive drop off on day one. And there's a couple of differences here. Like, as an example, in finance, they typically retain better than other categories just because there's a lot of setup. There's a lot of, gaining trust of the user. So they really put effort into, obviously getting that trust and getting that effort, right at the start. Gaming obviously is an outlier here as well at 27% on day one. Gaming is one of those industries where you're funneling in so many people right at the start, whether it be organically or through paid activity. And obviously this is one of those verticals where building a a solid foundation for those users to come and obviously experience your game and obviously try it out, obviously leans that to be higher on that day one level. But what we fundamentally see going all the way from day 0, where you've got 100% of your users, to day 30, is that there's a nigh on 90% drop. And this is sort of what we're going to be diving into in the next couple of slides. Cool. So why do most apps struggle post-install? We see it's a wide variety of things that we'll dive into, but overall, it's just because they don't extract the most value out of their acquisition efforts. There's a couple of fundamental points that we'll be going into. So one example of this is poor onboarding. We see a load of different apps trying to get as much data out of people as possible straight away. They may not be delivering value straight away within the onboarding, because fundamentally, if you have users that are coming to your app, they're coming to your app with a problem, right? And what we're trying to do is, understand that problem, but deliver them a message that is ultimately going to make your users think, okay, this is the app for me. We fundamentally see that there is too much friction before your first value is delivered. And we've got a stat here with 74% of users will abandon your onboarding process if it takes longer than a minute. This means that there is a real, there's a real thing to delivering value to your users straight away when they come on your app, because if you haven't attracted them within that first minute, a sharp drop off is going to occur. The second one is irrelevant messaging. We see, businesses pushing one size fits all, pushing email journeys. So what they may be doing is sending email campaigns that have, potentially the same data that they're pushing among multiple different users. They may not be personalizing their push notifications with, either, things like in-app activity. They may not be pushing, even your name within the push notification. Leveraging all of this kind of information will just make users want to open your message and engage with it even more. And we see this in the data again. 63% of users say they will stop using apps if the messages that are being pushed to them are slightly more irrelevant. The third one is a missed moment of delight. What we try to leverage in onboarding practices that we do with our clients, or what we just recommend as best practice, is really delivering value as quickly as possible. We'll see multiple onboarding flows that may be a lot more feature-led than they are benefit-led. And we really see uptick in driving that benefit-led messaging within onboarding, because as I said, users are coming to your app with a problem and they're looking for a solution. And again, users who reach that moment of delight in their first session are 4 times more likely to be retained at day 30. So remember, we were seeing that sharp drop off from 100%, down to nigh on 10%. You can easily raise that number just by delivering that value as quickly as possible. And then finally, just a lack of personalization. If you're treating, all of your users the same from day 1 to day 30, and again, users will be using multiple different features in your app. They'll be engaging with loads of different content. Treating all of them the same is, a fundamental part of where the overall experience from installing to, the first day to day 30 breaks. And we see this with, again, 72% of users are only really going to engage with messages that are personalized to them. So yeah, how do top apps keep users? We're going to dive a little bit into some post-install engagement and churn prevention strategies. And I suppose if we're thinking about the flow, also, obviously, as we've discussed, rising acquisition costs are making each lost user more and more expensive. And as we've been through, most churn is happening within that first week. So it really makes the onboarding experience a real battleground for growth. And we're seeing loads of different apps trying to optimize what they're doing within onboarding. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. What we wanted to do was give you a couple of principles of really great onboarding that we see to drive users that not only are going to retain in your app, but provide value to you. So, as I said, the first one, delivering that speed to value. Getting that aha moment within the first session is really vital to obviously showcasing to your users, this is the app that I want to continue using. Obviously, if they continue to build that strong habitual use within your app, they're far more likely to stay. The second one, removing friction. If you ask for too much data up front, it can be a real challenge for your user to want to give away that data. So only asking for essentials like a first name, a last name, a password right at the start will make your users far more likely to go through that onboarding process. And then, when you've built that trust with the user, then you can collect more later. The third one is guiding with context. There are a load of different things that you can do, whether it be hard-coded within your app or even within CRM tools, to provide in tooltips and in-app hints as users explore. Really good examples of this that we'll, obviously come into a little bit later is, if you think about a meditation app as an example, users want to meditate a certain amount of times a week because they see that it provides a little bit of benefit to them. Utilizing frames within your onboarding process, whether it be pushing things like social proof or whether it be pushing things like, scientific benefit to meditating, can be really good to give your users a little bit of context into what it is that they'll be doing within your app. And the fourth one, as I said, showing features, not benefits. Showing benefits, not features, sorry. Showcasing what users can expect to get out of your app rather than pushing how great your features may be, will lead to better outcomes when users are going through your onboarding flow and deciding whether to continue using your app. So framing your onboarding around those outcomes can be really strong in retaining your users. And what we wanted to do was give a couple of examples of some onboarding flows that we see have been done really well. The first one, obviously, as we said, was speed to value. The quicker a user sees that core benefit of your app, the more likely they are to come back. So in this specific example with RHS Grow, which is a gardening app in the UK, in their onboarding flow, what they do is they provide insights into what you can expect within the app straight away from app launch. If you're a gardener, you may have plants in your garden that you want to identify pretty instantly. They'll a typical thing within gardening is knowing, when do I water the plants? RHS Grow say that they'll allow you to do that. before getting into that low-level data collection that obviously is necessary for the functionality of the app. So what they've done there is delivered that speed to value really quickly, but also just reduce the friction from app install all the way through to obviously signing up to the app. The second one, and I really love this, Headspace have done such a fantastic job of delivering speed to value straight away. Users that will be going towards an app like Headspace, may have a mental health need like anxiety, or they may be a little bit stressed. The first thing that you see straight from app open is breathe in, breathe out, which is such a fundamental human thing to obviously reduce your stress and reduce your anxiety. So they've really thought about that placement within their onboarding. The second thing, as I said, they've guided with context. In the second frame here, you can see that meditation, just 10 days of Headspace can increase your happiness by 16%. They've given a little bit of context about what you can expect in the app, whether it be, reducing your stress, moving more, or sleeping soundly. There's something for everyone. It just really reduces the barriers for a user to want to go in and think, is this app right for me? They tell you that right in the onboarding flow. So those are two experiences of onboarding that have been done absolutely fantastically. And I hope with everything that I've just said, with the onboarding and a little bit of data in acquisition costs, that somebody has learned something here that they can take into their own app. But with that being said, I think I can pass over to Naomi.
Thank you. I loved learning through those slides. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so one thing that I focus on quite heavily at Customer I/O is talking about how marketers like us can personalize our campaigns. And I am so tired personally of hearing the word personalization as like a trend that we'll see in the next year. I think personalization is far beyond just referencing someone's first name in an email. And personalization is something that the end user or the subscriber or the app user might not even see because there's so much happening kind of on your side. What I think really impacts retention marketing is personalizing, not only using first party data, but also the lifecycle stage that the user is in. So if you can, I always recommend marketers come up with something that I like to call a data dictionary, where you put together all of the events and attributes that you have available to you, and you write down not only what they're referenced as in your marketing automation platform or email platform, but how they can be used. And that level of visualization will not only allow you to see what you can insert as like personal first party data inside of your touch points, but it will also allow you to see what you can trigger campaigns with or segment your users by, not only onboarding, activation, engagement, expansion, and win back, but kind of that full retention view. And personalization in action, again, is not just first name being referenced in an in-app message or a push notification or an email. It's dynamic in-app content. So saying, hey, if someone's done this, let's say they've completed already one of those key moments in day 1 or day 2 of the app experience, show them this content instead. You don't always want to be blasting out an in-app message or a push notification to everyone if they've already taken certain actions. And so I love seeing dynamic in-app content based on certain events already being taken by the end user or triggered. And that level of personalization is going to make the user experience so much better, even though the end user might not realize it right away. The other element of personalization that I love to see is time zone triggers. I can tell when a business or brand, isn't necessarily using time zone to their advantage. I'll wake up, in Vancouver and I'll have emails in my inbox that have arrived at 3 a.m. And I'm like, that brand is located in Europe or even like APAC, right? They're sending me information even though I'm absolutely asleep. And whether it's a push notification or an email, I'm never taking those actions really right when I wake up in the morning. They're way more impactful to me if I'm actually awake or in the middle of my day, or they're relevant to what I'm doing. So in Customer IO, I always reference individuals' time zones. We bring that in via the app, or we either have asked them where they're located. Completely depends on the individual app experience or business. Now, one of my favorite case studies, Les Mills, is a global fitness company. And if you've ever been maybe like someone who likes New Year's resolutions, anyone here who loves a New Year's resolution when the clock strikes midnight, you'll know that a lot of people might put fitness as a New Year's resolution of theirs, right? Many businesses have a peak season that drives most of their revenue, making customer retention critical for sustained growth. Now, in the fitness industry, this season is December and January, and competition becomes so fierce, right, as people set health goals in line with their New Year's resolutions. So when more and more individuals after COVID started veering away from at-home workouts, Les Mills faced a challenge with year-end approaching and kind of those retention numbers that were looking not great. So what they did was they launched their churn intervention project to identify and retain customers through predictive modeling and a multi-channel messaging strategy. They developed a machine learning model to identify at-risk customers, and then they integrated this data into Customer IO to use in personalized multi-channel campaigns. So with in-app messaging, push notifications, and email all kind of operating in tandem, the team engaged customers with tailored discounts, offering annual memberships. And ultimately, what happened here was Les Mills proved that prioritizing retention over acquisition can yield significant cost savings, right? Because by focusing on retaining existing customers, they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in ad spend, which is always scary. Whenever I see ad spend, I'm like, whoo, you guys have a big budget over there. Now, we heard that Les Mills, operated this multi-channel strategy, but what they ultimately did was an omni-channel campaign where all of those messages, push, in-app, and email, worked in tandem instead of in silos. And so before you go cross-channel, absolutely recommend that you build a strong foundation of onboarding and those behavioral insights and personalization. And it ultimately starts with building trust, turning real-time actions into real-time reactions, and ensuring that every touch point feels relevant no matter the channel, so that someone's not receiving an email from you saying one thing and then they go into the app and there's another thing. Really important that you have visibility and awareness into what all of those channels are doing, and even more if they're operating together. I highly encourage an omni-channel playbook, right? Some level of definition of how you're going to use the channels instead of keeping them in silos. Customers do not experience your brand one channel at a time. They move fluidly across them, right? So your marketing should too. And I would encourage you, this is harder if you're working in a larger team and like one person owns email and one person owns in-app, but you have to become buddy-buddy with those people. You need to shift your thinking from thinking in silos to orchestrating a cohesive connected journey across email, SMS, push, in-app, and even web. And another one of my favorite case studies is from Zen.com. They're a global fintech company that aims to make shopping and money exchange and daily financial management more secure by streamlining all of those things into a single mobile app. Big challenge. And despite a daily influx of new users to their mobile app, the Zen.com team faced challenges converting them, which is fair. I think a challenge we all face as marketers at one time. During this time, their sole method of interacting with customers was originally through email. So despite people signing up to the app, they really only originally communicated with their users through email. And primarily focusing on transactional touch points rather than engagement topics. So the bare minimum. Now, ultimately, what they did was, again, they shifted to this multi-channel, omni-channel strategy where they added push and in-app education to the user journey. They analyzed user activity levels within their app to trigger unique activation campaigns and promotions based on user actions. So again, really important to have that data dictionary and awareness of what events you're tracking so that you can trigger those touch points. They utilize location segmentation to send local offers in the local language. I love a localization success story because I know it's like quite hard to do and a big hill to climb. So when it's done right, I'm always like, wow. And then Zen.com also implemented campaigns based on customer value, enabling them to nurture customers at different stages of their life cycle. So I love this one. They were able to activate a lot more users, which is a great success story. Retention and all these areas of the customer lifecycle are ones that you could read about all day, and I could deliver 10 or 100 more case studies. And you could set your course of action live, but you actually won't know what your users prefer until you test. So what could be successful for one fintech company might not work for you. And so I highly encourage you to always optimize with experimentation and to challenge your own biases. Whenever I'm running an A/B test, I always post in Slack. I'm like, okay, everybody make a bet. And it's just an emoji bet, but like make a bet on which variant you think will win. And it turns into a fun like social activity. And there's so much that you can test too, right? Obviously, you have kind of the copy things that you could test, subject lines, message headers, testing directness versus curiosity, things like timing and cadence, finding the moments your users are most receptive, whether it's weekday versus weekend, morning versus night, maybe an hour delay versus a 24-hour delay. All those things are so valuable to know. And I highly encourage you to test these at least once a year too, because customer expectations and the customer experience does change as well. So what might have worked for you 1 year ago or 5 years ago might be very different today. I myself have done a lot of testing with content variants, layouts, images, tone of voice, CTAs. I recently learned that my user base does not like a designed email. They prefer a plain text email, which is great because it's really easy to get out the door. But I was so excited to introduce this like beautiful email design and nobody cared. Another area that you can test is channel sequencing, right? Leading with push or an in-app message, and test the reverse order too, right? Which one delivers more impact in the moment? And then finally, segment level testing. This is a great one. Run tests on high lifetime value users versus new signups to personalized strategies. So what is the ultimate framework for building a high performance retention journey? Now, if you're going to plan this out, if you're going to sit down with your team right after this webinar, maybe tomorrow if it's late in the day for you, there's 5 steps to how I would map out a framework in terms of how you can develop retention marketing for your lifecycle campaigns. First, map out your life cycle stages. I normally see, 5 or 6 buckets. You could dwindle it down to 3 buckets: activation, monetization, where you're getting a credit card number for them or a subscription in the App Store, and then retention. Or it could be more granular, such as acquisition, onboarding, activation, engagement, expansion, win back. Map those out. What does that look like for you and your users and your business? And then what are the success metrics, right? Are you looking for activation rate? Are you looking for specific feature adoption? Is there certain aha moments that your end subscriber, end user are going to hit where they're like, this product is amazing, or I love this app? What are those moments? Can you map them out to ensure that your touch points are leading to those success metrics? And then data dictionary time. What kind of behavioral data or just data in general do you have? How can you lead up to those aha moments or those success metrics? So looking at high impact points like cart abandonment or inactivity spikes or feature completion. These will all be really important signals to you. And then the fourth is building out cross-channel campaigns for each stage. So what channels can you use to kind of encourage those aha moments or those milestone moments or those activation points in your app? So looking at coordinating your email, SMS, push, and in-app to reinforce value and remove friction. I do quite a lot of brainstorming in Miro or FigJam. There's a ton of whiteboarding tools out there. I love Miro because you can take all the stickies and then get AI to summarize kind of your key buckets. And that's been really, really helpful to me. So I do a lot of brainstorming exercises in Miro where I map out what I want the ideal customer journey to look like. And it becomes a really fun team building exercise. So highly encourage you to do that as well. And then finally, test, learn, and optimize continuously. So please make sure you're A/B testing or your multivariant testing where you have, not just 2 variants, you could have 3 or 4 variants all running at the same time if your audience group is large enough. So validate the strategies, And if your test comes back without statistical significance, or comes back, not in your favor, that's okay. It's very normal. Nobody likes to talk about that, but it is what it is. And just keep testing and keep challenging yourself. Arizu, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Naomi. That was great, Naomi and Stephen. I always love hosting these because I can kind of sit here like an audience member and just digest and learn all of these strategies and frameworks and all of the, marketplace data. You've painted such a, I think, important picture of some of these big challenges that, all of the app marketers in the chat today are facing. But I think some of my key takeaways from this is retention is now the growth lever. And I thought it was very interesting to see in the poll actually acquisition and retention kind of on par as the two main challenges that, some of these app owners are facing at the moment. I think that's very reflective of the wider ecosystem. But they both work together to really effectively impact, long-term strategic growth for any app business. Onboarding is make or break. It's that first interaction with an app product. It's really your moment to really show value to the user, to be able to capture essential data. And a poor onboarding experience, as Stephen mentioned, can really be detrimental to your product. But a great onboarding experience will just leave great sentiment with the user and hopefully activate them for the long term. Personalization, Naomi, I think you're right on that front. It's a buzzword that's kind of been overly used in this space, but I think it's so key, so important to be able to leverage personalization in a very data-driven way, to be able to speak to users contextually. And omni-channel beats siloed messaging. App marketers now have more power than ever to be able to reach users through push, in-app message, email, and understanding which of these channels work best for your users, again, is all about, amping up that long-term retention strategy for your product. And then finally, retention is a continuous process. I think we can all agree that, there's no silver bullet with any of these strategies. It's all about hypothesizing, giving it a go, gathering the data, and running that ongoing A/B testing and just seeing how you can make incremental gains and impact over your kind of app growth process. So I'd like to thank Naomi and Stephen so much for sharing that information. And if you want to connect with any of us on LinkedIn, please feel free. It wouldn't be a mobile and app webinar without a QR code. So feel free to add us all on LinkedIn.